Hey guys, John the Con here, and welcome to my Getting Started with Warhammer video series. In this series, we talk about the tools that you need in order to bring your models to life. In this episode, we'll be talking about the actual tools that you're going to need at hand to start physically building your models, and we're going to be going in depth about the paints and the tools for painting that you're going to want in order to get started. So without further ado, grab your favorite drink and let's get started. So let's start off with the actual models. So once you get your models, these are on a sprue like I've talked about before. These are mold injected plastics, and they come from Games Workshop directly from the factory, just like this. So a lot of people, when they get into the hobby, they see all these beautiful pictures and everybody's beautiful painted army, uh, and they don't anticipate the amount of work that actually goes into these. So these are all separated by parts. In this case, this is called the Phobos Primaris Librarian, or the Primaris Librarian in Phobos armor, actually. And as you can see, he has some base parts here. His foot is here. He's got his shoulder on this side, his pack that charges his armor right here. You have his librarian book and his arm, his sword, and his head all the way over here. So it's a hodgepodge of pieces. Now, you always will get instructions with these models. In this case, I pulled this one off the Warhammer Imperium magazine, and this was a subscription that is offered that come with a model as well. However, the instructions are actually inside on how to build them and how to paint them, different color options that you have, but you have the direct instructions here on how to build them. Now, you want to be as precise as possible when it comes to following these. So definitely read the manual. Read this, read it. Because I ran into a couple issues with the first models that I built off my combat patrol where I decided, hey, this looks easy enough. I could just put them together myself, right? Well, there's a certain order that you want to go through, because if you build a part and it's not, the part previously is not in place, it's not going to allow you to actually put that physical part once those two pieces are together. So definitely, please, 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 I stress this because I went through it. I don't want you to go through it. Is go in order. So definitely go by one piece. Go with the first, go with the second. Then from there, go ahead and clip that on, so on and so forth. Okay, so always stay in that order. Now, when it comes to actually clipping your models off the actual sprues, you want to get as close as possible to the model itself. Okay. Now, a tip: do not go ahead and just go in there and start cutting right off the bat. If you see, because sometimes you'll see a couple little parts overhang a little bit, and you think, hey, I don't need that. And actually, it's something that pegs into, let's say, the base or something in that effect. So, what you want to do is do what I just did. It's just basically flip it over, analyze it, make sure that that piece is actually an excess piece, and then from there you could just go ahead and cut it. Okay, so go ahead and cut it as close as possible to the actual part that you need. Now, another thing, you want to have a clean area, okay, because these, if once you start cutting and you start picking up a pace, right, when it comes to the last piece, you're going to clip, and then you'll clip it, and then the thing will go flying out. So what you want to do is just make sure that you hold on to the piece that you're cutting itself, okay, and then clip it. All right, then you can actually, if you're having the trouble, it's like, oh, it's down here, flip it over, okay, flip it over, and then from there cut the next piece. And then once you see you'll cut all three pieces, you'll be able to have it in hand and you won't have any issues. All right. I'm not cutting this one completely yet to show you, just because I want to work on this guy a little bit later and I like to keep my guys on the screws. But I do have one that was already done, and I'll just pull out all the pieces right here. Now with this one, I've already built them, and this is an extra one that I actually won at an eBay auction. However, you see all the little pieces right here. So if you look at that, I have the actual finished product here. Just give me a second, I'm pulling it right here. Okay, so this right here translates into this guy, which is Jetek Subarai. Okay. Now, for little pieces like this looks like it was just cut off the actual sprue itself, and they didn't actually start cleaning any of the mold lines. All right. So what are mold lines? All right. So if you see here on his head, there are little white lines and little spider webbing that goes on all over and on the sides. All right. What you want to do is reverse your actual blade, and using the flat part right here, you could go in there to start with and start reducing that down. Okay. Now, the reason I say to use the backside and not the front is because with the front, you could have the tendency to go in there and actually slice, and then you'll have like a deep slice by accident. Even if you're careful with it on the side, I've experienced by going back and forth on the sharp side, I'll actually penetrate the model, and that's the last thing you want. So you want to use the backside that's a little duller, and as you can see here, it works just as well without going in there as deep. And as you can see, we have some of the little residue left over on here. Okay, so you definitely want to clean these guys out as clean as possible. All right, and don't worry if you miss a spot or two here. You'll be able to see it once you start priming the models. And when you prime the model before you actually start laying your first paint coats, you can always go back and say, hey, you know what, let me go back here, let me clean that up a little bit more, and then reprime it just a little bit more. All right. So I was actually taught that little trick by Diego at SBD Studio or SDB Studio, and he's based in Argentina, and he's actually one of my paint mentors when it comes to building models and putting them together and going through to the final product. So this you want to, you see all the way over here, and you'll get that all over. You'll get that not only on the head pieces, but you'll get them at random spots. All right, so like right here, look at his bird. We have his attack bird. You could just go in here. He has a piece right here. His wings also have white marks. So you could just go in here and again start scraping them. Take your time with these, okay? These guys are expensive. They're super nice, and you want to go ahead and do the best possible when you start painting them and putting them together. So the more that you get rid of these, the more real it'll look, and the better it'll look in the long run. So as you can see here, it goes all around. And don't worry about, like, if you're saying like, oh, okay, wait, maybe I went a little bit too far. No. You could always round it out after. So as you see here how it's coming off, you could always round it out after, and you could always work it up a little bit more. But start off lightly. You'll get a feel for it. You'll see it. Once you start using the back of it, you'll see it, and then use different angles as well. Flip it over. Flip it off to the sides. If you need to, flip it upside down. Get all the best angles that you want on here, just to get rid of all those mold lines. Again, they're going to be all over. So you just want to analyze the model, give it all angles here on the tire itself. You can just come straight down and boom, look at that. It removes it. You can see the difference from here to here. Okay. So definitely want to go that route. So let's put this guy away, and we'll talk about the actual building process. So once you have your models cleaned up of all the mold lines themselves, So again, I left a couple little examples here, left and right, but again, take your time with them. But once you have them cleaned up, you have two options in order to start getting them primed. And this is where I'm going to be talking about the actual paint accessories that you're going to need, right? So you have two options in order to start getting them primed to get painted. So what I mean primed is that you want a primary coat of primer, basically, on your models in order for the paint that you're going to be applying to stick to. Because if you paint them directly off of this plastic, it's not going to stick right. I mean, you're going to have to give layer and layer and layer, and still not going to, you're not going to get the results that you want. Okay. So you have two options. So you could either leave your model just like this, and we could paint in something called subassembly. And I'll show you what are the best tools for that. Or you could actually put it together, and from there you could prime it put together. Okay. So this is self-explanatory. You basically have them together, and then from there you're basically going to spray over it with either a spray can or your airbrush. All right. The other option is subassembly. Now, for subassembly, I have this that I purchased on Amazon, which is a bunch of alligator clips. All right. Now, what you want to do with these, so let me just move these over. So you want to start clipping the parts that are not visible when it comes to painting, or when it comes to the final product, onto the clips. Okay. So as you can see here, that bottom part is not going to be visible, so I'll clip it there. So then that way I can start painting the actual model itself, or start priming it. I'll do the same thing with these. And this is perfect because this is on a little grid right here. And it has the little clips. And you can actually remove these little parts right here. They're little rubber protectors. So you can actually grip completely with the teeth, or you could put these on here, and I have more of them, around. But you could just go ahead and clip it on there, and now you'll have actual models here, or the actual models clipped in, ready for you to paint. Now, when it comes to little smaller pieces like his backpack or his chest piece, what I like to do is get double-sided tape. So you can get just the generic sided, scotch, or generic double-sided tape, and you can loop it around here, and that way I know I'm getting full coverage of everything. So what I do is I stick the model on top of that if I don't have nowhere to clip, and boom, look at that. He is stuck on there. He's not going anywhere. You could actually prime him. You could actually paint with this in detail. You could flip it around, and then paint bottom, paint the side. So you have that option right here. And now when I'm done painting him, I could just leave him to dry right with the others, right on the pegboard. So I could just put it back down, boom, and there he is. So you can follow those same directions going down with the rest of the pieces on the actual subassembly grid here. Now, the other option, if you decided to not go subassembly like we have right here, and you have your model here, okay, what you want to have is something for you to hold on to this model, and not the base directly. Yeah, you could definitely use the base, but look, that's what happens. So you'll be holding them. You have the tendency to flick them off, and then you're going to have, troubles holding the actual model right while you're painting. You're going to have it shaking a little bit. You're going to want to hold these models upside down, and then you're going to have some awkward um, hamstring or hand movements here on the side. So you want to have something to hold on to these models. Now, if you don't have anything right off the bat, you could always use a cork. So any cork will do as long as it's flat on both sides. And what you do is you just go ahead and you cut a piece of double-sided tape. You stick it to the top of it, and then you take off the top, and then you stick your model on top. All right, and then you could have something to hold on to. Now, me, when I first started, I didn't, I had a cork, but I found it was too small. So I actually had this flashlight. And what I did is I did the same thing. I had a flashlight and I have a bigger hand. I have big hands. So I was able to, say, hey, look, I could use this as a dowel. So I put the double-sided tape here and I stuck my model there. And what I did was I primed this earlier, and then I put the white coat that I wanted for the one that I'm known for here, um, for my White Scars Army. So the beauty about that is that you can stick any type of models in there. But my friend Jordy actually came through and he said, "Hey John, I've been using these wooden dowels, and I found that these are the perfect size." And he actually gave me 4 of them. So thank you so much, Jordy. I appreciate it. And I've been using these ever since. Okay. So I use these for all my figures, even for the bigger ones like my Redemptor Dreadnoughts or my Impulsor. So they all fit them perfectly well. You just have to find the right point on the model itself in the middle, and man, they are not going anywhere. They are stable. So from here, you can actually grab it and paint. And again, you could be very precise because you don't have to worry about this thing floating around or shifting around on you. So as you see here, I have an Outrider, which is a little bit bigger, and here I have an Eliminator, who's a little bit smaller on the actual uh, dowel. Now, for the smaller objects, I like to use the cork. So as you see here, I have the Eliminator's head uh, right here on a cork. And all I did was, again, put double-sided tape, and I went ahead and just whoop, plopped him down, and he does not go anywhere. Now remember, when you're going to be using the paints, you're not going to be brushing up against this guy roughly. It's not going to be a hard um, you're not going to be going over it really hard. It's going to be a light, feathered movements in order to get these the paints on there. All right. So again, you could use anything around that circular that you could hold on to that you'll be comfortable. So you could use dowels, and again, you could get these over at your regular hardware store where they sell wood. You could ask them to cut it down for you. This is about, I would say, like 4-inch, 4.5-inch, 5-inch dowel. Or you could use something like a flashlight if you have that at home and you want to use that and you have a good grip around it. And for the smaller objects, just regular run-of-the-mill corks from your wine bottles. So one thing I forgot to mention when it comes to your model building is that sometimes you're going to have leftover pieces from the sprue. You're not going to use all the parts because you tend to build what is your preference and what is cool, right? So my suggestion is for these type of pieces, these small little tidbits that you could use at different times, go ahead and get yourself like a little pillbox or get yourself like a little small organizer just like this so you could pop in all the extra parts that you're not going to be using, like the heads, extra arms, extra terrain pieces that you could use on the actual bases, extra weapons, more heads, little guns here and there. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of pieces that you could use later on when you're kit bashing and doing little things like that. Uh, that you could use these for, and you can have them organized and don't have to worry about losing them. So get yourself something like this in order for you to keep those. Now, when it comes to painting itself, you have a lot of tools out there. And in my previous video, I mentioned that you could start off with something like this, just regular artist brushes. And I started with these at the beginning. And I have them here. There's an extra set that I had, but I have them here. And you could definitely start off with these. I had no issues with them, but I did notice that it was hard to keep them sharp at the beginning, so I would have to pass them through water and constantly try to get little fine details with these were very hard. Okay, believe it or not, I actually painted my first model of my white scars using these brushes. Okay, now I did the outside of the actual model itself completely using the brushes. But when it came to the actual lenses themselves for the Space Marine, I bought myself a secondary cheap pair or cheap set of a little bit finer artist brushes. These are fully synthetic, okay? And this is what they look like. They all come with protectors here once you start stepping up just a little bit, and they're a little bit sharper, okay? The problem with these that I noticed is that they don't hold that much paint. As you look at them, they're very, very thin, okay? Even though you have different gauges of them, they're very thin and they don't hold that much paint. So I ran into the issue of basically the paint drying I was um, while I was trying to paint these guys. So I would always have to go back wet and then come back and forth. So it was a little bit of a pain at the beginning. So it was learning pains, right? So let me just set these down. Let me set this guys down, right? So what happened with that is that at the beginning, I was using something like this in order to put my paints and really not I mean, this is great to use. I mean, this is something actually essential that you're going to use. But when it comes to the beginning to thinning your paints and things like that, it was not as practical. I noticed that the results were not where I wanted them to be. So from there, I started using an actual wet palette. Now, what this is exactly what I just said. It's a palette that you put water on this right here. It's like a sponge, okay? But it's a membrane actually. So this, if you put water on it, it'll retain it, and this stays moist. So as you can see, the water coming out of it, you see. So what you want to do is always keep this wet. So I always add water on the bottom, and the purpose of this is, and you want to keep this straight as possible. I'm just showing you for these purposes, is to keep your paints moist. Okay, now these keeps them moist from the bottom up. All right, and then you basically are able to reuse them multiple times. So it keeps them moist both on the bottom and on the top. So a wet palette is essential when you're doing thin coats on your paint. So you definitely want to have a set of brushes and try to get, if you get one of these regular ones, it's perfectly fine. But at least get yourself one that are you're able to get a little bit of a finer point on. So, like, let's say this is how they come, but once you wet them, you see they start getting a little bit better when it comes to the points themselves. And you could just sharpen them on your finger here. And then from there, you could dip them into your paints, and then you could start painting. But this is after. So we'll put that back in there. These are little protective coats. So just to reel this back in, you're going to need definitely a dry palette and a wet palette when it comes down to painting, right? So that is when you actually start to paint the actual model itself. Now, when it comes to priming, you have two options. You could go off of a regular spray can itself, or you could go ahead and get yourself an airbrush. Now, don't be intimidated by these things. All they do is they hold air, and from there, you basically uh, just push down on the nozzle. Let me just fill this guy up. So you just push down on the nozzle, and air comes out. Now, you can control the air by going back itself, and you can just, every time you push down, you have air coming out, right? So you press down and push down, press back and down, and then you could basically paint with it directly. Now, you fill it up. Usually, top loaders are the best because you're going to be working from the top down, okay? and you can fill it up your paint here, put the little top back in so that way nothing comes inside. You don't get any dust or any hairs or any particles. And at that point, you could just grab your model and you'll be able to coat them. Now, the other option, again, it's the rattle can, which is a spray can that you could use if they sell primers already done. However, I'm down here in Miami, Florida, and yes, it's warmer, but I was afraid of the paint clumping and coming into all the fine details that you see everywhere on these models. So I wasn't really too comfortable at the beginning with doing the actual spray can or the rattle can. So I just jumped in and I bought myself uh, an airbrush actually. So I actually bought a TimberTech airbrush right here, and it's super simple. I have the on and off right here in the back. You have the release right on the bottom here, and then that'll release the air, and then you have the control of the PSI. You just pull it up here, and then you go back and forth, and you control how much air is going to come out of it, and you snap it back down. This is something very simple that you could get for, I believe, like $70, and it comes with the actual the airbrush itself and extra parts. Now, after you've decided, hey, I want to go either the rattle can, which is perfectly fine, you feel comfortable just painting, and we'll do more tutorials after that of what the difference is and how to do both of them. You want to start off with a good uh, set of paints. First, starting off with a primer. Now, I've used the Army Painter. I love the Army Painter, especially their air line, their air lines that they use. It's called the Air Color Triads, and they have an array of different colors that you could use on your army. So what this looks like, brand new, is this right here. So it's Warpaint starter. So this is Air Warpaint starter, and it actually comes with the primer, and it comes with a medium or a thinner. So this you could use actually to thin down your paints, as you can see here, uh, to get them to the consistency that you want. And we'll talk about the technical parts after that. But the paints that you want to get is something that is completely well-rounded, just like this. And the reason I like the air paints is that they're already thinned down pretty well. So if you're not going to use a wet palette, you can actually go ahead and get these, and they're pretty thin down, so you don't have to use very minimal water in order for you to paint. But the beauty about this is that you get the metallics on here, so you have a plate metal, and you get all the colors that you're going to need. So you have the leather brown, you have the flesh tones that you want for your models that I use on all my models here. Excuse me. And you have your selection of all the different base colors that you're basically going to use in order to paint your armies. The skeleton bone here is phenomenal for the actual bones themselves. Like as you see up there on the skulls, they come out really nice and really vivid. And all the other colors are great. You have matte black, yellow, green. I use all these paints for everything that I do. So this is an all-in-one from the Army Painter. It's called the Warpaints Air Starter Set. I highly recommend this one. Awesome, awesome. Now, the one thing I recommend too is once you have your actual paints themselves, you want to have some washes. Now, washes is the stuff that goes in between the model itself to give them like that weathered look, to go into the recesses and bring out all the details. So you want to have some good washes with you. So I started off with the Nolan oil, which is great. And as you can see here, I actually was a victim of the famous tipped over pot when it came to the Citadel uh, pots here, the Nolan oil, because you pop these open here, they clip up here, but you put them down and then you start painting, and then you basically grab it from up here, and then if you don't have it secured, it'll tip over. So we'll talk about that when we start getting painted. But you could definitely, I found Nolan is really great, but I use other ones like this one from Vallejo that basically like the game washes that have different colors in order to get those little recesses here and there with different colors left and right. So I have them all over. So let me put these back in here. And this holder, by the way, I got in Amazon. It was like $13. These are actually Amazon Basics holders, and they do the job. They're perfectly fine. Now, when it comes to the starter sets, okay, yes, you get the metallic silver, but hey, I use gold in my army, right? So I have gold here, I have gold on the shields, gold on the belt, and it didn't come with gold. It came with silver. So what I did was I had to go ahead and go with another Vallejo color. So I went with old gold, and you want to have this as well. So you want to have the two metallics that you want to start off with is always a gold, and you could go by preference because you could have an actual brighter gold, so like a newer gold or an old gold. And this is where you could actually get creative with your own models and your own style and see what you want. So you could get those. So remember, get your starter set, and then from there get your metallics, and you'll be in a really great shape as far as starting a starting point to start painting. So another little good tip to have in your painting arsenal is going to be a pair of jeweler's glasses. So I use these that I got on Amazon that have a little light built into them. It has like a two-stage light right here that'll help you shine the models on, or shine the light on the models that you're painting. And they come with different magnifications. So what you do here is you open this up, you pick the magnification that you want, and you have a clip right here. So you just basically clip them on, and there you have a little light to see exactly what you're doing. And this is perfect when it comes down to the little details, like the heads and the eyes of these figures, because they're tiny. You know, they're really tiny. So getting in there, you want to the better job that you do, the cleaner you do it, the better it looks. The more you sell the illusion of the realness of these. So this is definitely awesome. I use this from time to time. Uh, Thank God I still have my vision intact, my close vision. I do wear glasses for far, but for close magnification, everybody could use a little help. I don't, even if you have like the perfect 20/20 vision, just magnification when it comes down to it, it just helps all the way around. And the beauty about these is that they come in a little convenient package that you can just, they go in one way. You can just slip it right here, you close it, and you don't have to worry about them getting messed up. And the glasses, these things I've thrown around, I've dropped them by accident. I have two little kids, two boys who are crazy, not crazy, they're awesome, but yeah, they're a little bit rough on things, and they've seen it. Hey, Papa, let me see this, and I give it to them, and they get to see it. um, and no, they've held up perfectly well. This, by the way, the battery, you could actually charge it right here on the side, and it has an indicator when you go to actually charge it, which I could show you right now. So you stick it right in there, and it'll give you a little charging light to show you that it's charging. So these things are awesome. This particular one is Yakto-san, but you have an array of different ones that produce them. You can get them on Amazon, and yeah, just great to have. Now, another thing besides the paints that you're going to want is a good varnish. Okay, so I use in particular two different type of varnishes. I use a matte varnish and I use a gloss varnish, and we'll go into it in the future as why I have both. But it's basically important for you to handle your models. So as you see here, I'm handling my models from the paint. A lot of people are like, "Oh man, don't, it'll rub off." Yes, you're right. It'll rub off if you don't have a good varnish on top of your model. However, these are meant to be played with. These are pieces that you put on your board and you have fun with them. You put them all around and you put them through, and you basically are going to be constantly handling these guys. So you can actually, best practices are always hold them by the base. However, sometimes you have them around different pieces, and this guy will get shot out of the board, and you have no other way of going around without affecting the others but grabbing them right by the middle and taking them out. So that happens. So a good varnish actually helps you protect your models. Now, it's good to have both. You don't need that much of it, and I'll show you why in later videos, but definitely get yourself a good varnish. And the very last thing I'm going to be talking about in this video as far as the tools is going to be a little hand drill. And these are actually going to be used for drilling the barrels of the guns of your miniatures. So at the beginning, I didn't do it. So you could actually do it two different ways. So I actually painted on my models the little barrel hole right here. So as you can see, I have them painted on all of them right there. Later on, now I know the Redemptor has the holes already done, but this is what it looks like once they are drilled. So it looks a lot better when it comes to the illusion of the gun barrels themselves once they're drilled in. So if you want to go this route, you could definitely get a good hand drill, which you go in there and you could just go ahead and drill those out, and it'll give you this look right here. So you'll have the weapons themselves will look a little bit more real because they're actually drilled out right there. And with that, that covers this episode of building and the tools that you'll need in order to start painting your models. In the next episode, we'll go ahead and actually prime a model and start applying some colors. And along the way, I'll go ahead and share tips and tricks that I've learned through dozens of YouTube videos and my own practices in painting the models. Uh, the best methods that I found in order to come to an end result. So remember to subscribe and like my channel in order to stay up to date with all the content. So until next time, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.